Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Corey.
I'm John.
I'm George.
I'm Nick.
I'm Ryan.
And today's video we are talking about 3 games that we are excited to play. Let's get started. This list is going to be a little bit different for each of us, but the way I did mine is my first pick is a game I'm excited to play that I have played recently, but I'm just excited to play it again. My second pick is a game I haven't played for a long time, but I'm really excited to try it again. And my third pick is a game I've never played, but I'm really excited to play. Let's get into the first game that I did play somewhat recently, and it's a game that's kind of complicated and a little bit taxing on your mind, so it doesn't hit the table very often, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to get to the table again here soon. And let me grab it here. Game is Brass Birmingham. I have Lancashire and Birmingham. This game I got more recently, this version of it. But yeah, it's a Martin Wallace game, strategy style Euro game that, like I said, is really taxing on the brain. But you're basically trying to expand out these different industries across the board and connect them the best you can. Whoever can do that best wins, but it's just very difficult because I play this a lot just with my wife, just as 2-player, but I think we have played the other version as a group at like a 4-player count one time. And I think it's just as difficult and just as much player interaction no matter what player count there is, because the map actually gets smaller depending on the player count. So in a 2-player game, you're only playing with a few of the different territories on the map, and then as you increase the player size, the map size also increases as well. Each city can only hold a specific type of industry, so if you're the first one to get there and build that industry down, you're blocking it from the rest of the players, at least for the first half of the game, which I'll get into that here in a little bit. But so yeah, there is a lot of blocking, a lot of player interaction, and you're trying to connect the routes to best utilize the different materials or different resources that are already on the board. So for example, in the first half of the game, you are building canals. So you're connecting your different territories and cities with like these boat canals. And if you connect a network to a city that has coal, for example, or somebody had built a coal mine, you can then build that industry that's connected to that route using the coal from that mine that is further away down the map. Same thing with iron as well, but that works a little bit differently. But yeah, you're kind of trying to steal resources from other players and use them to your own benefit, and vice versa. You're trying to get other players to use your resources that you build out on your industries too, because the quicker you can deplete your resources from that specific industry, the quicker you get to flip that industry over to the other side. And when you do that, that increases your income for every round for the rest of the game, and it increases the amount of victory points you get at the end of the game too. Yeah, that's about it. There's a second half to the game where you're connecting railroads too, but I could just talk about this for a long time, so I'm going to stop now.
I do remember enjoying the Lanchester, whatever you said.
Yep.
Yeah, Lincolnshire, whatever.
Lincolnshire.
I remember it being fun. I do remember it being a little taxing. But yeah, I know you've talked about this game a lot, and I definitely think it's something I look forward to playing eventually here.
Yeah.
Gonna need a lot of caffeine that day.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it at the top of the Board Game Geek list, so
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be an interesting game to try for sure. I haven't played it personally yet, but definitely sounds and looks interesting.
Definitely not a game for everybody, but if you like Euros, it's definitely worth a shot.
My game, we've actually played once, and it was just last weekend, and that is Marvel Villainous. I think it is a nice, fresh take on the Villainous series. You're taking on the role of one of the Marvel villains, and each villain has its own unique, like, little player board and objectives and ways to complete those objectives using its specific little deck, which makes the game very obviously asymmetrical, and it is competitive then in that way, and you interact with each other's boards using this fate deck. The difference in Marvel Villainous is that the fate decks of all the villains playing actually get merged together with a generic fate deck, and you're playing out, the Avengers heroes towards everyone's player boards when you take the fate action. And I feel like this version did a much better job at forcing interaction with each other's boards and trying to slow people down, which I thought was cool. I think the way they went about the objectives for each villain was actually, or the ones we played at least, I think we played Taskmaster, Ultron, and Jurge. Who the heck were you?
It was Hela from Thor.
Oh, right, yeah, and you were trying to collect souls and whatnot. I think all those objectives were really well done and interesting, and I think we all came pretty close to actually completing our objectives. Yeah, it was a fun game.
I completely agree. That was the forced interaction between players. It wasn't so much forced, like contrived, but
right.
We had to be messing with each other. And in the other Villainouses, at least, that's been the biggest turnoff for me, is you can't really throw other people off. But for this one, we really were messing with each other and ganging up at different times. And it was kind of fun.
Almost like it was an added mechanic to the game in this version, where you were actively using that to your advantage at all times. And it didn't matter as much who you were attacking or who you were going after with that. You're kind of just like, oh, looks like John's ahead. I'm going to throw a card on him right now. Even if that card didn't really affect him to the fullest effect, like if it was more geared towards Jurge, I would still throw it on John if he was in the lead. But that added mechanism where it slows down that player, or that player who's in the lead, just enough to hopefully to where you can kind of catch up. So that was really cool.
Yeah. It was definitely one that will have a whole lot of replayability too. So briefly played, but want to play again. It's Skulk Hollow, and not playing it because I really enjoyed the game, but because I feel like that the rest of you all really enjoyed it, and I'm going to need to be competent and then like try to master it. I've only played it one time, but I just feel like that this is a game that we're going to play a lot. So I really need to understand the ins and outs more than it just being a, you're playing different soldiers and then trying to take down the big guardian, or vice versa. You're just kind of this big hulking thing that's swatting flies. Is I really need to figure out my niche into both sides of it.
Definitely room to grow with that game on learning how to play each side differently.
Yeah.
I guess a good reason to are excited to play it again is that you don't really like it that much, but we just love it.
Yes. That's it. Like I didn't connect with it nearly as much as you guys did, but seeing as how much you guys connected, and the fact that I think we might be getting another pair so we can do tournaments and stuff like that, I am going to have to get good at this game.
The game I decided to pick is called Kingdom Death Monster, and it's a huge box. You'll never hopefully spend more on a board game than that game. I don't know if I should feel guilty about paying as much as I did for it or not, but it is such a crazy experience, and I just dipped my toes in it when I played through it the first time with my fiance. And what's unique about the game is there's 3 phases to it. There's what's called like the hunt phase, the showdown phase, I think, and then a settlement phase. And in the game, you basically are you're in this world. It's a very thematic game, so there's like a storybook. And I don't know if it's one of the first storybook games. Gloomhaven, of course, is now kind of like, I think, what people think of when you hear a game has like a storybook. But this, I think, definitely predated. So you have this storybook that you're going to be reading through as you go through the game, and you don't really know where you are, but you're in this like hellish-like environment, and you have nothing to really survive with. You have no food, no water, so you and this group of characters are band together to survive, essentially. And during the hunt phase, you're going after some sort of creature that you hope to kill and utilize what remains you get from it to your own benefit, because remember, you have nothing, so you're literally using its claws for tools, you're eating its body for food, you're using its fur as clothing and to build structures. And so, but during the hunt phase, it's just like a linear progression of time, and you're just drawing event cards. Some are really bad, some are okay. Usually things in this game are bad, so you might just randomly die, and that's a big part of the game, is characters just die like that, and you just move on with your life. So it's a very mentally taxing game if you don't like dealing with death, so I guess I give that disclaimer. But once you get past the hunt phase, if you survive that, then you actually get to fight the monster, which is this ferocious, like the first monster you fight is this ferocious lion with claw hands that's running after you. And again, you don't really have, I think you start the game with like little stones or something. and it's very thematic, and this is the type of game that you play and then you have like a story to tell other people when you're playing this game. Because like you have these characters that you get to name whatever you want. So there's like an RPG. I would say kind of like an RPG where you just have named characters. You don't really pick a hero. You're just like a list of characters that are going to die off eventually. So it's not like a traditional RPG where you pick a hero and you progress with them throughout the whole game or whole campaign. In this game, you pick a character, you make up characters that die, and then ideally you want them to survive because they will get better as time goes on, but eventually they're going to get killed by one of these horrific beings that you're encountering. Anyway, it's a really cool game, and one that I definitely hope to play again.
Nice. Sounds pretty cool.
And it sounds like it's only about $250, right?
If it's on sale, maybe, if you're lucky.
Oh,
or a second-hand copy.
So my list is, maybe I misunderstood, but just a touch different, but mostly the same as yours. So this first one is a game that's kind of a current or newer game that I have not played yet, but am excited to play, and actually just got it. But it's Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. So hopefully the climate gets better, the weather gets warmer, and we can actually get together to play these games again.
Definitely want to try that.
Yeah, all right. I'm really excited. Gloomhaven is such a great game, but it's just such a beast to lug around 20 pounds and take an hour setting it up, and then an hour when you're done tearing it down.
Right.
And hopefully this game's a little bit lighter than that, but keeps the same spirit of the game. If you haven't played yet, Gloomhaven's pretty much boils down to you're a group of travelers, and it's kind of a hand management / deck builder RPG, but it just comes with beautiful maps. It's very story driven, lots of replayability. There's just so many different cards you can draw. You can pick different avenues and different places to go and fight to have different encounters. So really looking forward to that.
And in this version, the maps are actually out of a book now. You just flip to the page, to a page, and it's got the map just in the booklet.
I've actually
I'm not
watched.
sure if I'll like that more or like that less, or
Right.
like it the same, but it's a cool idea. Maybe some time saving and stuff. But.
I think about midsummer I watched like 3 or 4 reviews for this, and yeah, I liked a lot of what they said with how they streamlined everything, and you can take everything from that and put it into the main game too, once you're done with it, and it's kind of more introductory and builds into that more complex environment, which seems cool. So count me in when you start playing.
Great.
So my second pick is a game that I haven't played for a long time, but I'm excited to play again here, hopefully soonish. And that game is Crokinole.
Yes.
It's been about 12 months exactly to almost the day since I last played. And, oh man, just had a blast playing it. It's just it looks so simple when you're looking at it on the table or looking at it being played. You're just flicking discs towards the center of the board and essentially trying to get it into the center. So there's a divot in the center of the board that when your disc falls into it, it kind of goes down into the divot and you score the most points for it. It's got some pegs that are around the center of the board that are basically encased in rubber. So when you hit it, it really springboards it away from the center of the center of the board. And the cool thing that I kind of fell in love with about this game is that on your shot, you're not just simply trying to flick your disc into the center of the board, but there's a rule that says that if your opponent has a disc on the board, you have to ricochet your disc off of theirs before your disc counts toward any points. There are some trick shots that you can kind of get good at. There are some other defensive plays that you can play to position your disc to where it's difficult for your opponent to hit it. And I don't know, there's some cool strategic and tactical plays with this game. And it's all wood. The discs are wood, the board is wood, but it feels like it's like an air hockey table when you slide it across. It feels so cool, like the disc is on ice. And I forget what material. I don't know if it's like a sawdust type material or something that makes it slide, but it feels so satisfying when you're flicking those discs.
My game that I haven't played in a long time is actually a game I have not played since I was probably in high school. It's Axes and Allies. I think this it's another one of those really long war sim games, and you're probably gonna want to plan 8 to 12 hours to play a whole game of it. But man, I loved this game as a kid, and through college I played a digital version with some friends, and it was still a blast that way, just not quite the same. I don't know what else to say about it. You roll a lot of dice, and you buy your military pieces you want: infantry, tanks, bombers, fighters, aircraft carriers, submarines, all that fun stuff. And every unit has its own characteristics and die rolls it needs to hit with and whatnot. And I don't know, it's always been really fun and something I haven't played in a really, really long time.
The game that I haven't played in a long time that I would want to play back and actually finish is Clink Legacy, because we never actually finished that one.
We have one mission left.
Yep.
No.
So I'd really like to put a bow on that. Not just because I think I was winning, and I know everybody would say that, but calculating the points and the how far we were down the track, not to spoil anything, but I think I was the furthest. It would just be nice to put a bow on that Legacy game and finish it up.
Well, I guess the one that came to mind was a game called Uboot by Phalanx Games. And Uboot is a World War II submarine simulation game,
okay.
in which you and up to 3 other players are crew members of a German submarine or U-boot during World War II, and you're simply going out in the seas to take down Allied merchant ships, or Allied, ideally cargo ships that have a lot of tonnage. The more tonnage you're downing, the better. You just want to destroy their supply line. What makes the game really unique is it is an app game, so you do need an app on your iPad or whatever to play the game, and that's used to essentially run the game, but you also use it when you're using the periscope to kind of see what's above you. So in a way, it's like an actual computer game for some parts of the game, because you're using it for the periscope function. Sometimes you're going to have Allied fighters trying to find you, so you have to try to use the AA gun on yourself using the app to try to shoot it down. And then
cool.
there's also like a 88 cannon. I forgot the caliber of cannon that subs typically had, but if you want to just go for an easy kill with that, you can use the app to shoot at Allied ships if there's no destroyers around. Otherwise, you're going to be destroyed very quickly with the guns that those ships have. The 4 roles are like captain, engineer, I want to say first mate, and then forgot the name for the last crew member, but each person is going to be in charge of their own kind of set of mini games, similar to what's Captain Sonar. Only this is fully cooperative, so you're all together in your mini games. And what's really cool is that in order for anyone to do anything, you need an order from the captain to actually do it, which I think is kind of thematic. Like, I'm guessing that's more or less how it was back then, is you needed an order in order to do something as if you aren't the captain. So the captain only has so many orders that they can give out every few hours, and it's like a real-time game. The app simulates real time, which is really cool. So if you want to cook a meal, you need to give an order to your cook to cook the meal, and then that's used to keep your morale high. If you want to load the torpedoes, you need to give that order. You need to flood the torpedoes. If you want to use your electric engine, you have to give that order. If you want to switch to diesel engines, you have to use that order. And then you need to know what elevation you want to be at, because and you have to factor in tons of things like time of day, the weather conditions, where you are.
Yes.
There's a navigation element to the game, so you have a navigator who's trying to guess more of, like, if they're smart, they know where you are in the Atlantic, but if they're not the best navigator, you may be a little off course. So the better you are at that, the more successful you'll be. There's just a lot of elements in this game that are really unique and really cool.
So my next one is a game that I actually have not played. It's an older game, but I always think, wish I could get it to the table. I bought it like 2 years ago, and it just hasn't got off the shelf.
Uh-oh.
But it's Caverna. Corey, every time you ask, do you have a game that you haven't played in a while, Caverna always comes to mind. It's just one that it just hasn't made its way to the table for whatever reason. And it's a worker placement tile game by Uwe Rosenberg, which that name probably tells you enough what kind of game it is, because he makes different iterations of that style of game over and over, and they're all great. So hopefully we'll get that game to the table soon.
Did he do Agricola?
Yep, this was the follow-up for Gorilla. Yep.
The follow-up, yeah. So have you played Agricola too then? Or have you
I haven't played that one, actually. A lot of Euros, you don't really interact with the other players, and Caverna, you do a little bit interact with other players a little more, so that kind of, I liked that idea. That's why I picked this over Agricola.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
that makes sense.
I did try playing Caverna one time. It actually came out back in 2013, so I just looked it up real quick. But I think it probably was in 2013 when I first tried it, so it was like a little bit closer to the beginning of my whole trying to get more heavily involved in gaming, and we couldn't really figure out the rule book. There were so many different actions you can do. I think you only had a couple workers that you could use, but I mean, it was one of those games where you've got like 50 different options for 2 different workers. But Caverna definitely seemed cooler than Agricola because you're building out your own little cave, like you're excavating like a cave and kind of building out your own little like house like inside the cave. I don't know. I don't really remember all the details, but it seemed pretty cool. So my last pick is kind of the same thing as Ryan was talking about. This is a game that I'm excited to try. I've never played it, but I purchased it not too long ago. Just haven't gotten to the table yet, and that is Rubrik, Dawn of Kiev. I don't know if you guys have heard of this one, but it's a new Euro-style game. Again, I like my Euros. Say what you want. But it's got a lot of area control elements and some kind of attacking elements too. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Kemet, where it seems like you're trying to send these forces to different regions of the board to try to control the different regions the best you can. So it's got a lot of area control. The unique thing about this game that's really cool is that it has an action selection board, and you've got these basically these action workers or these people in front of you that are numbered 1 through 5, I believe. And the higher the number that's on that worker, the better they are at doing that action and the amount of that action you get to do. So, for example, let's say there's a column on the action board that is for movement. And if John were to play, let's say, an action 4 worker on there, but I went in there with my action 5 worker, I would actually bump his 4 down below me. So when it's time to resolve those actions, I would get to do mine first. And not only that, I would get to do 5 actions, and then he would go to do his 4 movement actions, and so on and so forth. Same thing holds true with, all the different actions. So the attack action and whatever else is on the board. So seems like a really cool mechanism that I haven't tried before. And just one I'm kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, so my game I actually bought back in March and is kind of fitting with the times right now, but is Pandemic Legacy. We have seasons 1 and 2 now, and haven't touched either of them, but I've heard really good things. Maybe there's some skills within this board game that can help us solve the current climate of things. I don't know. But definitely worth a try. And for anyone who hasn't played Pandemic yet, basically you take on the role of scientists and doctors and operators. And essentially you're going across the globe and trying to put out all these little virus fires and come up with cures against these viruses using cards. And really fun, pretty straightforward. Curious to see what the Legacy version of it adds into the mix and how that story is kind of made. So yeah, want to play that.
Me too. Here it's amazing.
Right.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and that's part of why we have to finish our last Legacy game. We can start the next one. Otherwise, it's a vicious cycle. So to briefly kind of circle back and merge what we were talking about right at the tail end of Corey talking about his game, the one I'm looking forward to is Ankh, which I fully backed on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
This was last week. And it is set to arrive, I believe, in April, last time I saw. And it's essentially a merging of Kemet and Blood Rage. So 2 games I really like. I really like the Egyptian theme, and then all the mechanisms of Blood Rage I really like, and I fully backed it, so it's with all the expansions and all the bells and whistles. So I'm really looking forward to bringing that to the table and seeing if my first foray into Kickstarter was worth it or ill-advised.
So I will, I guess, continue the trend we just started talking about Kickstarter games, and I backed the Company of Heroes board game, and
Oh, yeah.
I actually never was big into the Company of Heroes PC game, but I've always been a big fan of RTS games and like RTS World War II games in general. So the theme appealed to me, and the way that the game was presented, at least in the Kickstarter, looked really cool compared to it looked unique from any other World War II tactical game that I've played before. So I'm excited to get that to the table. I really like that the game offers both solitaire and cooperative play. That was definitely a big deal of why I wanted to back it, because I thought a World War II tactical game with solitaire/cooperative playability is somewhat unique. It just looked like a cool system. We'll see if it actually plays well once I finally get that delivered, and I've lost track of what the current projected timeline for receiving that game is. But I think within the next few months is what I should be able to get it to the table. So yeah, that's the Company of Heroes board game.
All right, mine is, I wanted to talk about a game that I haven't played yet, and I also probably will never get to play, but I always wish I did, and that's Android Netrunner. I was kind of late to the stage getting to learn about it, and by the time it was recommended to me and kind of hyped to me, it was like 2 months before Fantasy Flight decided they were no longer going to print anymore or support the game. And I'm sure there's communities out there, but with COVID, obviously no one's playing anything at the stores, and certainly it's hard to convince a couple people to buy into an out-of-print game where you have to buy multiple copies of the base game and various expansions if you really want to get into it. So I'm sure it's something that I'll just never get to play. But similar to Skulk Hollow, it's a asymmetrical card game, and I always thought that I would love it and wish I'd gotten into that scene when it was active.
I did get to try to play this game one time. Way back in the day. I went to Con of the North, which is a really small gaming convention here in Minnesota. And some random guy was sitting down with a copy of Android Netrunner, and I was like, hey, I always wanted to try it. So I sat down with him and said, do you mind teaching me how to play? And he was extremely into the game, where he had all the expansions at that point, up to that point, and had built all these custom decks that were really good. I think he gave me the bad deck out of the two, and he had his tournament deck just for himself because I just got wiped. But I had heard that that's kind of a common theme for the game, though, too, is that there was a lot of that going on. Obviously, whoever has the better deck is more likely to win, but it does have that high level of strategy, too. And like Ryan said, the asymmetric nature of it is really, really unique. You don't see the theme of this game in many other games, where one player plays a deck of like a corporation and the other player has a deck that's more of like a team of people that are going and trying to hack into the corporation and bring them down. Really cool theme, but I got wiped and never tried it since. Well, that wraps it up for today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for sticking to the end with us here, and I hope you had a fun time hearing us ramble on and on about various board games that we're excited to play. And until next time, you all have a great day.